Hey all, welcome to Training with Kayce. I'm Kayce Cover, your host, and today we're going to talk about puppy prep and we're going to work toward the plan for our puppy prep. And I'd like to talk to you about how I approach dog training compared to what I see from a lot of my colleagues. A lot of my colleagues are mostly focused on solving problems and teaching trades to dogs. But I look at it differently. I'm going to start out teaching the dog how to decipher his environment, how to cope with his own emotions. To do that, I'm going to make an extensive training plan that covers everything I want that dog to learn over the course of his entire life. I see my job not as someone to make the dog bend its behavior, but someone that needs to motivate the dog to want to bend his own behavior and to empower him to be able to do that. So, how do we approach that? I use a really helpful plan, the Lifeline. And the Lifeline is literally a line. I just draw a big long line out, and then I'm going to mark the events that need to guide my training. And some of these events, there's going to be new events throughout an animal's life. And some of them, some of the milestones will repeat every year. For example, if you're working with sea lions, because of course, this comes from my experience with exotic animals. So, sea lions, they have their first puberty, and that's a big deal. And then they have their first breeding season, and that's a big deal. And the first pupping and the molt. But the next year, they'll do those things again, perhaps. And so they won't be the really new stressful thing, but they'll still be big deals. So we've got certain things that happen again and again every year. And then we have certain things like that you have to cover the first year and maybe not again. And maybe, 5 years into the animal's life, you're going to go into a huge competition or you're going to go from an obedience career to a search and recovery career or something like that. So, you've got the things that happen every year, and you have the things that happen maybe once in a lifetime or two times in a lifetime. So, to track those things, I make two lifelines. One is the whole life, and the other one is the annual. So the annual covers all the recurrent things, the holidays, the weather patterns, like summer is stressful because there's more people and it's hot. And maybe there's also certain disease pressures that are greater in the summertime or the wintertime, whatever. When you think about stresses when you take your dog out for a walk in the wintertime, maybe there's chemicals on the road and you've got to make sure to wear booties. So you've got to make sure the dog is trained to tolerate the booties before you get in the middle of the winter. But in the summertime, you might need that just as well because the asphalt is very hot. So make a lifeline. Now, I did make one. So let's take a look at it. It's not complete, just to give you an idea. I'm going to share my screen. And great, right? Okay. So in the lifeline, the animal's born, of course. Then you've got to wean it. That's a stressful event. He has his first vet check, maybe the first vaccines. It's going to go to a new home, new owner, new environment, new rules. Going to have another vet check. He's going to start having vet checks for the rest of his life, right? So maybe the first one, you do an eye and ear check, a stethoscope, and a palpation. Maybe the next one, you do all those things and add vaccines. Okay, that's what we did here. The third one, maybe you add a blood draw. The fourth one, maybe you express anal glands. Um, so you want to put those and put the approximate date. Okay, so due date. When is that training actually required? I wish I could learn to type. What a concept. Okay, now he's also going to learn vocabulary. That's really important. You're not going to believe how important it is until you do it. I don't want to argue about it. If you don't think that dogs can cope with vocabulary and language learning, that's okay. All I ask is don't block yourself with your uninformed opinion. Go test it. Get your opinion informed by focused experimentation and learning, and then make a decision. But I've got over 50 years of experience. I'm telling you, it will give your dog a better life. Okay, then you need to teach your dog perception modification. You need to empower your dog to cope with stresses and manage their own emotions. Now, here are some other things that you're probably going to want to teach your dog over the course of the life. How about travel in the car? Deal with other dogs, deal with other environments. Summer stresses like heat, crowds, dealing with water. Does your dog not like water? Does your dog run willy-nilly into water sources that you don't know anything about that could be full of blue-green algae and kill your dog? Maybe you need to teach your dog water etiquette before it becomes absolutely critical. What if you boat? What if you go hiking in the summertime? Do you need to teach your dog about snakes? Do you need to make sure your dog knows how to swim? Do you need to make sure your dog will cooperate with putting on a life vest? You get the gist. So just to give you some ideas on things to put on your lifeline, what about vacation? Is he going to travel and he needs, car skills and walking in public skills? Or is the dog going to go to a boarding kennel? Will the dog have a pet sitter and be able to stay in his normal environment? Figure it out because that's going to determine what you need to teach. Other events, puberty, breeding, pupping, weaning. For some animals, not so much dogs, the molt. Okay, that's very stressful for marine mammals. Right around there, you might start career training. And of course, there's more than one career option. For winter, you've got the cold to cope with. And that can mean ice on the ground also, so maybe booties. You've got the holidays. Will your dog cope with other people in your house? Have you done childproofing? What about fireworks, sledding, snowmobiling? And I already said wearing booties. If you've got an Italian Greyhound, your dog may need a wardrobe. Make sure that they'll tolerate it and maybe even enjoy it by teaching them to cope before you need it. Now, spring, I would think that spring wasn't a big deal, but it is a big deal. It's the transition from winter into warmer weather And surprisingly to me, I read that April has more deaths than any other month of the year. More people and animals die in April than at other times. So it may be much more stressful than we would imagine. Now, as you keep going, the seasons are going to repeat. So you're going to get those transitions again and again. And you'll have another vacation probably, or some other kind of travel. Then you may choose a career and you may change that career. You may have competitions in that career. You may plan for the huge finals in 19 or 2037, right? Got plenty of time to plan for that one. Okay, and I already mentioned the annual line. That's right here. Remember, the annual line is those repetitive things that come every year. The seasons, the vacations, the changes in like tourist numbers. That's a big one for exotic animals. And then what you do is you take this lifeline and you take the annual line and you figure out what you need to teach. So let's go back and look at it. Okay, you don't have to teach anything to the dog about being born. The mom takes care of that. You're not going to be there for the weaning and the first vet check and the injections. But when you get the dog, he needs to know. I'll just put these in parentheses afterwards. Owner's name, location names, item names, action names. You see a trend coming here with the new environment. Oh, I'm sorry. I put them all in the first line. So the first thing was the new owner. Needs to know the new owner's name, their smell, the way they are. For the new environment, he needs to know the location names, the names of items, the names of actions, new rules. Explain all rules. Okay. When possible, show the difference between, I'm trying to think of how to say this, correct and incorrect. Yeah. Okay. So if you just tell the dog, do this thing, and they do it right, and so you praise them, and then they do it wrong, and you get after them, or even if you don't do anything, they get no feedback, they're not going to learn at their fastest and easiest. What will make it better is if you say, okay, this is what it looks like when it's right. This is what it looks like when it's not right. Can you please do it right or correctly? Okay, so we teach the difference between correct and incorrect. That's a game changer right there. Okay, and then with the vet check, we said that at the first check, we were going to do eye and ear check, the stethoscope palpation. Those are the things you have to have ready by the first vet check. So when is that going to be scheduled? That gives you your due date. So you can put that on your behavior list, and that's going to be a priority behavior to have it done in time for the vet. There's no reason generally to take a dog to the first vet visit without being prepared. All right. So the second one, the dog knows everything he needs to know, but you've got to make sure that he'll accept a vaccine. Oh my gosh, that requires a needle. Guess what? It's no big deal. It takes me about 2 minutes to prepare an animal for an injection. And even with animals that have a history of big problems, I have never yet had a single problem with an animal with an injection. Okay, 2 minutes of work, but you need to do that work. A little trickier to do a blood draw. But if you take a look at my video on YouTube on the pigs with getting their blood drawn, you're going to see that these pigs are perfectly happy to stand there voluntarily while a 5-inch needle gets plunged into their body, into the vena cava within an inch of their heart. And we did have a problem. The problem that we had is that all the pigs wanted to be first. And so we had to teach them to wait their turn, to wait till their name was called. Now, you want to see how well that works? When you watch the video, look behind the tech, because right behind his shoulder, you see the next pig quietly, politely waiting his turn. Okay, don't you want that for your dog? Don't you want your dog to be comfortable and confident when getting a blood draw? It isn't hard to do, but it needs to be done. You have to go through a process. If you just wait and try to distract the dog while somebody sticks a needle in it and the dog flexes a muscle at the wrong time, it's going to hurt. It's really going to hurt, and he's going to feel betrayed. If you want to stick a needle in me, just ask me. Okay? I mean, well, I'm not going to go along with most of you guys, but I'm just saying, if you came to me at a party and you were trying to save my life by giving me a vaccine, and there were 3 of you in white coats and you grabbed me and stuck a needle in me, I'm going to try to kill you. But if you came to me ahead of time and explained, look, here's the vaccine, here's the disease, blah, 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 I might very well cooperate and say thank you. These, you have to think this way. It makes a difference how you present things to the animals. Okay, then on my list here, I have learning vocabulary. And look, it's all the way after all these things. But I'm going to tell you the truth. I start vocabulary instant 1. I just name everything. It's usually short labels, but we just name. Okay, so as we look at all these things, what would you say are the most important behaviors here? Some people would say all the vet-related behaviors are important, and I do agree that they are very important. I personally think that the perception modification is more important. But I'm going to teach vocabulary first. Why would I do that? Because it's not more important. Because it's on the path to training the most important things. In other words, for me to efficiently teach the dog to cooperate with vet checks, I'm going to use a lot of vocabulary. And understanding that vocabulary is going to improve and ease the rest of the dog's life and my life. So I'm just going to start doing it. And guess what? This is the kind of training you can do even when your animal's in quarantine. Let's talk about quarantine for a minute. I think I'm pretty controversial on this. And for good reason. I mean, I believe that the animal should be quarantined for a very good reason. And the reason is because when your dog has to change homes, he leaves his animal family, his human family, his environment. He's got a lot of grieving going on. But he also has to simultaneously adapt. He has to cope with the trip. Okay, he has to cope with all those separations. He has to cope with the trip. He has to cope with the new environment, the new owner, the new everything, possibly even new food. That's a lot all at once. And animal medicine has shown that animals that have had a big stress, like a move or the death of a partner, are not able to maintain their blood gases for 30 days, at least 30 days after the stress. So, when we talk about an animal maintaining blood gases, what we're talking about is the animal's ability to maintain homeostasis, which is a consistent, healthy internal body environment. So the fact that you moved your dog from the mom to you means that for 30 days, the dog is having a tough time just being a healthy dog, whether you see it or not. So I don't want to add a bunch of other adaptations or adaptation requirements right then. What's an adaptation requirement? It's something the animal has to adjust to, which costs him energy, and that's equal to a stressor. Okay? Doesn't mean the animal doesn't enjoy it or doesn't like it, but the dog has just so much energy to spend living. And if he spends 50% of his energy, getting food and water and a place to sleep and all that, and he spends 20% getting along with the other dogs, we're up to 70%. And if he spends 20% on immune issues, now we're up to 90%. And let's say he spends 10% dealing with other dogs. And now all of a sudden, a dog moves in next door and he barks and threatens your dog, and your dog hates him. And now all of a sudden, instead of spending 10% of his energy, he's spending 30%. Huh. He doesn't have 30%. Okay, that other energy has already been spent just for day-to-day living. What do you think happens? It comes often out of the immunity. Okay, the animal no longer has the normal percentage that he would spend on the immune response. He gets sick, or he's more likely to get sick. Matter of fact, animals have a 3 times greater than normal chance of getting ill or dying for the entire year after a major stress, like going to a new living place or losing a partner. Okay, and in a way, your puppy that comes to you lost a partner, they lost the last owner, they lost their, mother, the siblings, and they also have a brand new environment. So a lot of grieving and a lot of adaptation going on. So I think you should do the quarantine. I know. It's critical to get your dog out and do this, this, and this during this 4-week period. Well, when your dog gets to you at 7 weeks and you need to keep him quarantined till week number 11, you can be creative and introduce him to all those great things that you want to teach him about, but do it at home. Do it in the same environment that he's already adjusting to, and keep it low stress. Now, I'm going to tell you the truth. I have only had 2 dogs that I saw never adapted normally to family life. And both of those dogs came to me at the age of 18 months or greater. having been, I mean, one dog was a street dog and one dog came from a shelter, right? And those two dogs I couldn't make the time up with, but they were still really good dogs. All the other dogs, I never have upheld the schedule that everybody says needs to happen. And I've had some great dogs. Okay. So we've talked about the lifeline and we've talked about listing all the behaviors that you need. And then you're going to say the due dates for those behaviors. So you look at your lifeline, you see what you need to train by when, and you list those behaviors and you list the dates that you need to have them trained with by. Then you look at the behaviors that you have to teach in order to get to these goals and the concepts like vocabulary that you have to teach on the way to these goals. And you list those things, and that's your training plan. Okay? So your training plan can start, gosh, you're going to have a lot of vocabulary to teach. Let's go down and see what it might be.
Am I allowed to watch?
Okay. Hey, everybody. Thanks for being here with me. And I just want to explain my mom came in and asked if she could talk to me. And she's going to be sitting here with me, and she is most welcome to be there. But I didn't want you guys to wonder what was going on. I'm very glad to have my mom living with us. But sometimes it collides a little bit with doing classes and so on. Okay, so let's talk about vocabulary. Here's a couple of pointers. First of all, name everything. I usually use one word to name it. This is food. This is food. Ball. This is your ball. I work in opposing concepts. I don't teach left and then right. I teach left versus right and right versus left. Whenever possible, I demonstrate the thing to the animal. I show them exactly what it is. I let them smell it and feel it and look at it and even taste it sometimes. I let them examine whatever it is I'm trying to talk about. Now, this is really important, and this one usually takes people a while to get into. I cross-relate things. If I'm talking about body parts, I'll say, these are your ears. Now remember, yours are going to be the opposite of mine, right? This is your right ear. This is your left ear. You have two eyes. This is your right eye. This is your left eye. Okay, so ears versus eyes. So they're two different body parts, but they both have a left and a right. So then when I say, here's your shoulders. Do you have a right shoulder? Yes, it's right here. And here's your left shoulder. So we're naming the body parts, showing where they are in relation to each other, and talking about their location at the same time. Or I might say, I'm going to touch your head for one. One, good. I'm going to touch your head for two. One, two, that's good. I'm going to touch your head for four. One, two, three, four. And so it goes. We talk to the animal about how many he has. This is your mouth. You have one mouth. These are your teeth. You got a lot of teeth. You got a lot of good chompers there. Here are your ears. You have two. One, two. So we're literally teaching the animal to count and about numbers in this early vocabulary work. So here you go. These are what I call all the different body parts. Gracilis and pectineus are actually pretty important. And I could never think of a good word for them, so I just use the names of those muscles. When we get down to locations, I also had other concepts I couldn't think of easier names for. Maybe you'll come up with them. In fact, one comes right now to mind. We have right versus left, front versus rear, ventral versus dorsal. In other words, this surface of the body versus this surface of the body. But we could say top and bottom, but I was I had cognitive dissonance over doing that because over bottom or top versus bottom with a sloth is the exact opposite of what it would be with a dog, for example. So it got too complicated for me. Okay, we name the dogs privates. The dog may have to have the anal glands expressed. You need a vocabulary to explain it to the dog. For confirmation competition, dog has to allow the judge to inspect his private parts. Good thing to bring up ahead of time with any dog. So we have ventral versus dorsal, but we also have proximal, medial, and distal. And there are other indicator, or there's other labels that can be useful that you could add there. We're going to teach directions, durations, the names of items, the names of individuals, the names of events, the names of actions. Okay, now you see the next thing we're going to go into is perception modification. So I hope to see you there also. And for now, we'll stop, and please help us by liking and subscribing to this video so that it gets out to as many people as possible, and it helps us a lot. Thank you very much. Okay, have a great day.